How can something as comforting as chocolate hide so many ugly shortcuts? Because the bar you grab for a treat might be loaded with cheap fats, too much sugar, or ingredients that barely qualify as chocolate at all. If you want food breakdowns that help you spend smarter, eat better, and call out the hype, hit like, subscribe, and share this with the biggest chocolate fan in your life before we start. Americans spend billions on chocolate every year, and most people assume a shiny wrapper means quality. But that is exactly how weak chocolate keeps winning. The packaging looks rich, the marketing sounds fancy, the price sometimes feels premium. Then you flip the bar over, read the ingredient list, and the truth hits hard. A lot of what gets sold as chocolate is really candy built around sugar, oils, fillers, and branding. And in some dark chocolate bars, there's another problem that people almost never think about until a report makes headlines: heavy metals. Consumer Reports tested dark chocolate bars and found lead and cadmium in all of them. Not some, all of them. Their reporting also said only 5 bars they tested had relatively low levels of both lead and cadmium. These were 1 each from Mast, Taza, and Valrhona, plus 2 from Ghirardelli. That one finding changes the whole conversation, because now this is not just about taste. It is about what is really inside the food people call a little daily pleasure. And there is a bigger layer under all of this. The U.S. Department of Labor says about 60% of the world's cocoa comes from Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. This is where more than 1.5 million children work on cocoa farms. So when you buy chocolate, you are not just buying flavor, you are also buying a supply chain. That means the smartest chocolate shopper is not the one chasing the loudest brand. It is the one asking a harder question. What am I actually eating, and what system am I paying for? So let's break this down the right way. First, the brands that are easiest to skip if you want real chocolate instead of marketing theater. Then we will get into the 7 brands that actually make a stronger case for being worth your money. At number 11, Kit Kat. This is where people get defensive because Kit Kat is not sold like a serious chocolate bar. It is sold like a fun, familiar comfort snack. And that is the point. It wins on nostalgia. It wins on the snap. It wins on habit. But if your goal is actual chocolate quality, Kit Kat is a wafer candy bar with chocolate as the supporting actor. Nestlé openly says it uses palm oil in a number of products. And when a brand is built for global mass production, consistency matters. Cost control usually matters more than depth of cocoa flavor. That does not mean Kit Kat is the worst thing in the candy aisle. It means it should not be confused with real chocolate worth slowing down for. At number 10, Cadbury Dairy Milk. This one hurts people because the brand carries a huge emotional history. For many families, Cadbury is tied to childhood, holidays, and that creamy first bite. But memory can trick your taste buds. The current U.S. ingredient list for Cadbury Dairy Milk starts with milk chocolate made from sugar, milk, cocoa butter, and chocolate. It also includes lactose, lecithin, PGPR, and natural and artificial flavor. Read that again and notice what is doing the heavy lifting. Sweetness, dairy, flavoring, convenience. This is smooth, yes, but it is smooth in the way ultra-processed candy is smooth. It is built to please instantly, not to give you a deep cocoa experience. At number 9, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Before anyone says this is unfair, relax. Reese's is not pretending to be a single-origin dark bar. It is one of the most successful candy products ever made. But that is also why it belongs here. If you are looking for real chocolate, Reese's is a peanut butter candy delivery system. It is wrapped in milk chocolate. The official ingredient list includes milk chocolate, peanuts, sugar, dextrose, and salt. That is not a crime. It is just not a chocolate-first product. It is engineered for craveability, not cocoa quality. So if your title is real chocolate, Reese's simply does not belong in the winner's circle. At number 8, Ferrero Rocher. This might be the most effective luxury illusion in the entire candy world. Gold wrapper, fancy box, hazelnut center, instant gift energy. But once you get past the image, the ingredient list tells a different story. Ferrero Rocher in the US includes milk chocolate, hazelnuts, sugar, palm oil, wheat flour, whey, and low-fat cocoa powder. That is not a clean chocolate formula. It is a layered confection built from sugar, fat, crunch, and presentation. Delicious to many people? Sure. But premium chocolate? Not really. It is premium packaging surrounding a candy formula. It leans heavily on sweetness and texture. At number 7, Godiva-filled pieces and masterpiece-style chocolates. Godiva has one of the strongest prestige names in mainstream chocolate, which is why this one matters. Some of its simpler European tablets look cleaner, but many of the giftable-filled pieces tell a less romantic story. One ingredient listing for a Godiva dark chocolate ganache product includes sugar and unsweetened chocolate processed with alkali. It also contains palm oil, cocoa butter, palm kernel oil, butter oil, and soy lecithin. That is a very different picture from the elegant brand image. It is not that every Godiva product is fake, it is that too many people buy the name and never ask what formula is behind it. At number 6, Russell Stover sugar-free chocolates. This is where the label creates a health halo. People see sugar-free and assume lighter, smarter, safer. But a sugar-free label can hide a totally different problem. Russell Stover's own ingredient listing for one sugar-free assortment includes maltitol, vegetable oil, and chocolate liquor. It also lists sodium caseinate, cocoa powder, and more. Another listing for a sugar-free mint product also includes vegetable oil, so now you have a product selling restraint while leaning on sugar alcohols and oils that many people buy without understanding. If a chocolate has to be explained like a chemistry workaround, it is probably not the chocolate you reach for when quality matters. At number 5, Palmer Seasonal Candy. This is not even subtle. Palmer products are the perfect example of why reading the fine print matters more than reading the front of the package. Multiple product listings describe them as milk chocolate flavored candy, not chocolate. And once you look at the ingredients, you see why. Sugar comes first, then hydrogenated vegetable oil. Often it is palm kernel or palm. Then whey, cocoa processed with alkali, lactose, skim milk, and soy lecithin. This is exactly the kind of product the FDA labeling rules are meant to separate from real chocolate. If the vegetable fats replace cocoa butter, you're no longer dealing with the real thing in the way most people assume. That is such an important line to understand because it changes how you shop forever. Under US rules, products using vegetable fats instead of cocoa butter cannot just glide by as standard chocolate. That is why you will often see words like chocolatey, chocolate flavored, or coating. Those little wording changes are not random, they are clues, tiny legal escape hatches printed in plain sight. At number 4, Trader Joe's dark chocolate bars that landed on the wrong side of the heavy metals conversation. I have to word this carefully because this is where nuance matters. Consumer Reports did not say never eat dark chocolate again. It said lead and cadmium were found in all the bars it tested, and some products had more concerning levels than others. Trader Joe's was one of the brands pulled into that conversation. So this is not about panic, it is about pattern recognition. If you are buying dark chocolate for the idea of health, but the testing profile is working against that idea, rethink the purchase. At number 3, Tony's Chocolate Dark Bars, with comparatively high lead in reporting around the Consumer Report story. This one stings, because Tony's has built a strong image around doing better in cocoa sourcing. And to be fair, that ethical messaging has made the brand stand out. But mission alone does not make a bar a smart buy. If you are focused on heavy metal exposure, the brand has still been mentioned among bars with comparatively high lead. That means the conversation cannot stop at brand values. It has to reach the bar itself. Quick pause before the top 2. If this list is saving you from a mistake, send this video to one friend. Share it with someone who thinks every dark wrapper means better chocolate, and subscribe so you do not miss the next breakdown. At number 2, Lindt Excellence Dark Bars. Lindt is one of those brands people trust automatically. It sounds refined, it feels international. The Excellence line practically markets itself as a serious chocolate experience. But reporting around the heavy metal story pulled Lindt into the list of brands with comparatively high lead in some bars. That does not mean every Lindt product is the same. It does mean the brand name alone should not shut your brain off. This is a perfect example of why the chocolate aisle is so deceptive. A premium tone can mask the need for questions. And at number 1, Hershey's Special Dark. This is the biggest wake-up call because Hershey's is not just a brand. In America, it is the default. It is childhood. It is Halloween. It is road trips and muscle memory. But the official ingredient list for Hershey's Special Dark starts with sugar, then chocolate, and cocoa butter. It also includes cocoa processed with alkali, milk fat, lecithin, PGPR, and natural flavor. So even before the heavy metals discussion, you are looking at a bar built with sweetness first. Then there is the Consumer Reports problem, where Hershey's was among the brands making headlines for heavy metal findings. Once again, that does not mean one bite equals disaster. It means the product fails the reason many people buy dark chocolate. And that brings us to the most useful lesson in this whole video. A bad chocolate brand is not always the one with the worst commercial. It is the one that creates a gap between marketing and truth. Sometimes that gap is cocoa butter being replaced by cheaper fats. Sometimes it is luxury image hiding sugar-heavy candy. Sometimes it is a health-focused dark bar carrying testing results that force a harder conversation. And sometimes it is all three. So how do you shop smarter before we get to the better picks? Simple. First, look for short ingredient lists. Second, if sugar is the whole story and cocoa feels secondary, you're buying candy. Third, if you see vegetable oil doing the job cocoa butter should be doing, back away. Fourth, if a brand talks big about ethics or purity, Remember that those are claims to verify, not reasons to relax. And fifth, understand that dark chocolate is not automatically healthier just because it sounds grown up. Now for the good news. There are still brands making a stronger case with cleaner formulas and better sourcing. None of these are magic health foods. None of them cancel out overeating, but they are closer to real chocolate. At number 7, Theo's Pure 85% Dark Bar. Theo's ingredient list is exactly what you want to see. It lists cocoa beans, cane sugar, cocoa butter, and ground vanilla bean. That is it. No giant paragraph, no parade of fillers, no fake complexity. Theo also built a reputation around organic and fair trade ingredients. That matters in a market where transparency is often treated like a bonus instead of a baseline. Now, heavy metal levels can vary, so I'm not placing Theo here as a universal purity crown. I am placing it here because the formula respects chocolate. At number 6, Dick Taylor Craft Chocolate. This is where chocolate starts feeling less like a snack and more like a craft product. Their single origin bars are often built around an extremely tight formula. One Belize bar says it is 72% cacao and 28% sugar. That minimalist approach matters because when the ingredient list gets out of the way, the cocoa has to do the talking. And that is the whole point of real chocolate. It should taste like a place, a bean, and a process. It should not just taste like sugar wearing a cocoa costume. At number 5, Alter Eco Dark Blackout 85%. What makes Alter Eco stand out is how many basics it gets right at once. It uses organic and fair trade ingredients. Product descriptions point to a formula built from cacao, cocoa butter, and raw cane sugar at a high cocoa percentage. That checks several important boxes. Clean structure, strong cocoa presence, indulgence paired with responsibility. Is every shopper going to taste the difference right away? Maybe not, but your palate notices cleaner formulas over time. At number 4, Ghirardelli Intense Dark. Ghirardelli is a rare mainstream brand that gets to stand in both worlds. It is widely available, which matters for normal people who are not ordering from boutique sites. But it also got one of the best mentions in the heavy metal story. Consumer Reports said 2 of their bars were relatively low. That makes Ghirardelli unusually useful in this whole conversation. The brand is easier to find. It also gives cautious dark chocolate buyers a realistic option that does not feel impossible to buy. At number 3, Valrhona Guanaja. If you want to understand the difference between eating and studying chocolate, this teaches it. Official listings for Guanaja are tight. Cocoa beans, sugar, cocoa butter, sunflower lecithin, and natural vanilla extract. That is focused. That is intentional. And Consumer Reports also included 1 Valrhona bar among the low-level products. So now you have something rare. A serious brand with a real formula and testing coverage that supports confidence. At number 2, Taza Deliciously Dark. Taza is a reminder that real chocolate does not have to be polished to feel premium. In fact, part of the appeal is that it is not overly polished. The ingredient list is simple organic beans, sugar, and butter. Sometimes vanilla is included, but the spirit stays direct and cocoa first. Taza's stone ground approach gives it a grittier texture, and that can actually be a good thing. It feels less edited, more honest, more connected to the bean. Consumer Reports also listed a Taza bar among the products with relatively low levels of both lead and cadmium. This makes the brand even more interesting for shoppers trying to balance taste, texture, and testing. And this is the point where a lot of people discover they never really learned how to judge chocolate at all. They learned how to judge sweetness. They learned how to judge creaminess. They learned how to judge branding and gift boxes. But real chocolate asks you to notice different things. When you open a better bar, the smell usually arrives first, not just sugar, but cocoa, roasted notes, sometimes fruit, sometimes something earthy. Then comes the snap. Good chocolate tends to break with confidence. Then comes the melt. It should not feel like a candle giving up. It should unfold. And finally, the finish. Cheap candy bars disappear into sugar and leave almost nothing behind. Better chocolate leaves a trail. A texture memory, a flavor echo. That is why ingredient simplicity matters so much. A short label gives the cocoa a chance to be the main character. Once the formula gets crowded with vegetable oils and filler tricks, the bean gets buried. And if the bean gets buried, then the whole experience depends on sugar and texture engineering. That might still sell well. It just is not the same food anymore. There's also a practical reason this matters. People who switch to cocoa first chocolate often think the darker bar will feel harsh. Sometimes it does for a week. Then your palate changes. Suddenly, the old bars start tasting flatter, sweeter, and strangely empty. That shift is powerful because it changes your cravings. You stop chasing the loudest hit and start looking for actual flavor. And once that happens, the entire candy aisle feels different. Not forbidden, just easier to see through. So if you have never tried to compare bars side by side, do it once. Break off a piece of a mainstream candy bar. Then try a cleaner dark bar from a brand with a shorter ingredient list. Let both melt slowly. Do not rush. The difference is not always dramatic in the first second. It shows up over the next 10. That is where real chocolate wins. Before we hit number 1, here's the real cheat code. Stop buying chocolate with your eyes. Start buying it with the ingredient list. If this video changed how you read a wrapper, tap like and subscribe. Share it with someone who keeps paying luxury prices for candy in a fancy box. And at number 1, masked organic dark chocolate, 80% cacao. One simple question. Which brand makes it easiest to understand what you eat? Mast has one of the cleanest answers. The official list for its 80% dark bar is organic cacao, cane sugar, and vanilla bean. 3 ingredients. That is the kind of label that lowers your stress before the first bite. In the Consumer Reports testing conversation, Mast was one of the bars with relatively low levels of both lead and cadmium. That does not make it a miracle bar, but it makes it a clear example of what real chocolate looks like when the bean is center. Now step back and look at the bigger pattern. The brands to skip usually share one of 3 traits. They hide behind nostalgia, they hide behind luxury theater, or they hide behind health language that falls apart. The better brands are not perfect angels, but they tend to make fewer excuses. Their formulas are shorter, their chocolate identity is clearer. Their ingredient lists sound more like food and less like a workaround. And this is where chocolate becomes a useful lesson about the modern food system. The most successful products are often not the most honest ones. They are the ones that make you feel something first. Childhood, reward, comfort, status, energy, romance. That emotional shortcut is what companies are really selling. Because once you feel first, you stop checking second. That is how a hydrogenated oil candy becomes a holiday tradition. That is how a sugar-heavy confection becomes a luxury gift. That is how a dark wrapper becomes shorthand for wellness. But the wrapper is not the truth. The ingredient list is closer to the truth. Independent testing is closer to the truth. Supply chain transparency is closer to the truth. Your willingness to slow down protects you from clever branding. There is also a smart middle ground here that a lot of people miss. You do not need to become a chocolate snob. You do not need to swear off every nostalgic candy forever. If you love a Reese's once in a while, enjoy it for what it is. If Ferrero Rocher shows up during the holidays, you do not need to give a speech at the dessert table. The real win is honesty. Call candy candy. Call chocolate chocolate. Stop mixing the two just because marketing did. And if dark chocolate is part of your daily routine for health, your standards should be higher, not lower. That is where the Consumer Reports findings matter. They remind us that health halos can be lazy shortcuts too. A product can be darker, more bitter, and more expensive, and still force you to ask tougher questions. So the goal is not blind fear, it is informed preference. Here's the simplest framework I can give you. If the bar leads with cocoa and keeps the formula short, that is a good sign. If it depends on palm oil, hydrogenated fat, or mystery wording like chocolatey coating, that is a bad sign. If it sells itself as premium but reads like candy science, that is a bad sign. If it has independent testing on its side, that is a very good sign. And if the company talks about sourcing with real specifics instead of vague feel-good language, even better. One more thing. A lot of people think expensive chocolate is automatically better chocolate. That is not true. Price can reflect quality, but it can also reflect branding, gifting, imported image, or shelf position. Some overpriced bars are just costumes. Some modestly priced bars are genuinely solid. That is another reason Ghirardelli matters. It proves you do not always have to choose between accessible and better. And when a chocolate bar is actually good, really good, something strange happens. You eat less of it. Real chocolate asks you to slow down. It has aroma. It has texture that changes. It has flavor stages. Sometimes fruit, sometimes roasted notes, sometimes bitterness that turns into warmth instead of punishment. It feels complete faster because it is giving you more than sweetness. Cheap chocolate does the opposite. It pushes you to keep eating because it starts loud and ends empty. That might be the biggest difference of all. Fake chocolate chases impact. Real chocolate builds experience. One hits you fast, the other stays with you. One is designed to disappear into habit. The other makes you pay attention. In a fast food world, that difference is huge. So the next time you're standing in the aisle, do not ask which wrapper looks richest. Ask which bar respects your attention. Ask which one respects the bean. Ask which one still looks honest after marketing is gone. Because once you learn how to read chocolate, you start seeing the same trick everywhere else in the supermarket. The companies that win your trust should not need to confuse you first. And the foods that earn a place in your routine should not need a costume to get there. Chocolate can still be a pleasure. It can still be a gift. It can still be a comfort. But the best version of it is not the one shouting the loudest from the shelf. It is the one that has the least to hide. That is why the smartest chocolate buyer is not the one with the biggest sweet tooth. It is the one who knows the difference between a craving and a con. And once you see that difference, it is very hard to unsee it.